didn't get any Division I track and field cross country coaches to get back to us or to come on. And Jimmy and I are both runners and wrestlers, so that's kind of our wheelhouse, and we love having conversations, and we can kind of go between both sports and navigate that and have great conversations. And Jimmy and I are both also junior college All-Americans, him in wrestling, myself in cross country. And so when we kept getting roadblocked with the Division I coaches, we thought, well, why don't we just start chipping away at the JUCO, NAIA, Division II, and those sorts of things. And so uh, a little bit, almost a year, coming up on a year, Coach Bradley Souter from the University of Cumberland's NAIA indoor and outdoor national champs took a chance on us and joined us. And that kind of got the ball rolling. And then we had Coach Van Leerup and Coach Dominic from Wingate up the road
Oh
here
yeah.
joined us. And so since then, we've been able to have a lot of great conversations with a lot of great schools that are doing a lot of things. And what we're trying to do is have conversations with coaches like yourselves and present conversations to our younger selves when we wish we would have been able to have these sorts of things when we were going through the recruiting process. Because, sometimes guidance counselors, sometimes coaches, even sometimes parents, they don't necessarily encourage you to get out of your bubble and to see the world. And Jimmy and I are worldly and traveled quite a bit and have lived in different places. And so we want people, we want athletes, obviously if you have the opportunity to stay home or the money is right, by all means do it. But if not, and you're committed to being a student athlete and working hard and maybe you didn't hit your peak in high school, we can find you a place that's going to support you and support your goals and help you make that step to the next level. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great mission. Absolutely.
and Jimmy and I spent a good amount of time both in Leadville and in Denver, and so we love our Colorado schools. We love Jimmy's a graduate of CU Denver, and yeah, we love going to we supported the UNC wrestling team. We went to Mines for their wrestling matches,
Oh, okay.
and we actually I think we went to a Mines match versus Pueblo
Oh, okay.
back in 2022, I think it was, or 2021. So yeah, we are honored and excited to have you on, and we know you're doing great things. And I think from our perspective as Jersey guys living in Colorado, I think a lot of times people hear Pueblo and they maybe don't have the greatest impression of it. So
It's
hopefully
truth.
you can debunk
Yeah.
some of those things because the promotional video, the terrain and the surrounding looks pretty optimal for distance running and cross country running and running fast. So hopefully we can dispel those myths and get some Jersey people and some other people looking at CSU Pueblo and continue to help you build an amazing program.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate the opportunity. This is just a great concept in general. So I do think you're doing really good work. So I'm excited to have an opportunity.
Awesome. Well, we do appreciate your time and let's get into it, right, Jim?
All right.
Yes, sir. Take it away.
Awesome. All right, y'all. We are back. Last night we went belly to belly with Coach Hall from Utah Valley, and tonight we're stepping back onto the cross country course and into the indoor track facility. And we are joined by Matthew Morris from CSU Pueblo, as I mentioned last night. So thank you for joining us. But before we do that, make sure you are subscribed to Airey Bros on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. If you do feel so inclined, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over here, you like it, please, if you feel so inclined, give us a little value back. Check out that link in the show notes and buy the Prince and I a cup of coffee. We love our coffee over here and it keeps us fueled. Or if you are running an ultra marathon this summer, you got a marathon on the books in the spring, maybe in the fall, or you're doing a couch to 5K, holler at your boy, head on over to Black Sheep Endurance and let me help you with those goals, whether it's for racing, whether it's programming in the gym. Maybe you need some help with your nutrition. I'd love to put my precision nutrition certification to work. So send me some questions, send me some feedback. We'll get to you. We'll get you on those goals. All right, y'all. So as I said, we are joined by Coach Matt Morris from CSU Pueblo. A little bit of highlights of some of Coach's career accolades at CSU Pueblo. In 2024, he was a finalist for the Strider Report Best NCAA Division II Cross Country Coach. He led CSU Pueblo women's 2XC to their highest ever national ranking, number 2 in the nation. The women finished third at NCAA Division II cross country, best finish in program history. He produced 4 All-Americans in 2024, totaling 33 since taking over the program. He's led CSU Pueblo to multiple top RMAC finishes. We know how intense the competition is in the RMAC. I'm sure we'll get into that with Coach as well. He's coached multiple NCAA All-Americans and conference champions across cross country and track and field. His athletes have earned numerous academic All-American honors and RMAC Scholar Athletes Awards. Coach Morris has built CSU Pueblo into a powerhouse in the NCAA Division II, from conference titles to national podium finishes. What's next for the Thunderwolves? Well, we're going to find out right now. Coach Matt Morris, welcome to Airey Bros Radio. We do greatly appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is an honor and a pleasure. And as I said, we love our Colorado schools and we love Colorado. It's a great place. It's a great place for distance running and cross country. So we're excited to hear about all you got going on at Pueblo. I know there was just pretty recently you had an athlete who made history, and he was the first person on Colorado soil to break 4 minutes in the mile. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Coach, one of the things we like to do before we get into it, anything you would like to plug or promote, if anywhere you have questionnaires or anything, potential student athletes that are interested in checking out the school or talking with you, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think and that's not my strength. Honestly, I have people for that. I'm old enough that
Good for you.
yeah, the social media thing kind of passed me up, but we have gothunderwolves.com is our website, and that will have everything you need. It'll have a link on there for student athlete questionnaire. It'll have our facilities, everything you want to know about our school and our program. And then we typically push people towards our Instagram. Our Instagram is CSUP TFXC. And that we upload a lot of stuff to that as well. So those are probably our two main platforms to get hold of us, and there's much more on there as well. So I know a lot of people have other things. I have my own Instagram, but I don't really use it for that. So that's probably where you can find this most. So
Awesome. Well, we will put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well. And I guess the best way to start this off, Jimmy and I both have our origin stories, how we got into the sport, how we got into coaching. Our parents were runners, and so I was a young one who ran my first 5 mile race when I was 5 years old in order to win a fish tank. And, a lot of Jimmy's youth as a child was dragging around to gyms for wrestling matches and tournaments and cross country courses and track. And so I don't necessarily know if he had a choice in the matter in getting into the sports, but we would love to hear your origin story. How did you get into cross country, track and field, and as an athlete, but then also what was that light bulb moment where you knew you wanted to be a coach?
yeah, I think mine's probably pretty similar to a lot of people. I as I got into coaching, I realized that I was around a lot of just amazing people that had kind of nurtured me for that my whole life, but didn't know it. My dad was the high school basketball coach when I was growing up, so I was in the gym since day one, bothering the kids and dribbling the ball when I wasn't supposed to, and all those kind of things. And my dad ran both wrestling camps in the summer and basketball camps, and so I was constantly a counselor for those things. And I played all the sports. I grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska, and the pipeline boom. So I was born in Missoula. My parents were both went to the University of Montana, and my dad was on the track team there. He'd been on the track team and the basketball team at North Idaho College. I don't know if it still exists anymore,
It
but I think it
does.
turned into something else. But and then they moved in 1973 to Fairbanks to be teachers at the schools they were putting up really quick. And so I grew up in Fairbanks, and I played pretty mediocre hockey like everybody else did. And somewhere along the line, when I was about 10, my dad said I needed to choose between hockey and basketball, and it wasn't that difficult for me because I was never freezing in basketball. So I chose that, and I was vertically challenged, so my basketball career was fairly okay as well. And then I showed some ability to run a little bit and do some things, and I skied. When I got into high school, I ended up skiing on the Nordic ski team and had some success there. And then at the end of my junior year, one of my teammates had graduated and went to University of Alaska Fairbanks, and he ended up being on the ski team. And he talked me into running cross country to get in shape for skiing, and which seemed crazy to me at the time. But I really respected Pete's opinion, and so I ran. And the very first race I won, and I tied the course record. And so I realized then that I was pretty decent at running. And I was all state and cross country. So when I went to college, I had opportunities to do both, and I chose running. And I went to the University of Montana and was recruited by a guy named Bill Leach, who's been a really pivotal part of my life as far as not only as adult, but as his coaching. And the year before I went there, they'd finished ninth in NCAAs and cross. And be honest with you, same thing as I was probably more of a Division II, kind of athlete coming out, talent wise, but I had some great opportunities and had a decent career there. I was a varsity guy and had some amazing teammates, amazing coaches. When I finished, I I went to student teach, and I never thought about coaching before. In fact, I was kind of adamantly not wanting to coach because I watched what my dad did, and I thought to myself that was a lot of work, and I was always kind of annoyed by that when I was a kid. But then a good friend of mine, and he still coaches. He was a teammate of mine, John O'Leary. He's the head coach at Bishop Blanchette High School in Washington. Had volunteered at the school I was student teaching at. He's like, "Hey, you should see if you can volunteer and try out coaching." And so I went to the guy, and he was great. And I had so much fun that first year. I mean, it was way more fun than competing, honestly. Um, and then I kind of got into it from there. So, and as I look back, like I said, I learned so much from my dad growing up and so many great coaches and I was one of those guys on the team that was always signed up for the visit with the recruits and just doing some of those things that inherently come with coaching at the college level. So, I had good mentors, and that kind of started from there. So I started at high school coaching. I got to be a head coach when I think I was 24. Was way too young, didn't know what I was doing at all. And people are really patient with me. And then after about 10 years of that, I got my first college coaching job as a graduate assistant at Western Illinois. And that was a phenomenal opportunity for me. I was there for 5 years, got my master's degree, got certified in CSCS and some of those things. And then spent 3 years at Carroll College in Montana. And then this is my 12th year here at CSU Pueblo. So it's about I think, 31st year of coaching.
Excellent.
So it's gone quick. I realize
Yeah,
now I'm on the downhill slide of it, but in my brain it doesn't seem that way. So
I hear you. I just turned 49 last week, and I'm feeling every bit of it right now. And it seems like all of a sudden I woke up last week and different things started hurting. I'm like, what is going on? But
well, it doesn't seem to be slowing you down too much if you're able to finish as high as you are at Leadville and some of those places. It's you must be doing pretty well still. So
I keep having keep signing up for things. I don't know. It's I'm chasing that dragon.
that might be the trick is just keep plugging away, huh? So
Well, you know, I tell everyone, I wasn't the fastest guy in high school. I wasn't the fastest guy in college, but I'm still running. So a lot of the people that were better than me in those two realms have long since retired. So, maybe it's just a war of attrition, and I didn't win some of the battles, but I'm gonna win the war maybe.
there you go. There you go.
I'm curious, Coach. One quick thing before I let you jump in here, Jim. What was it like growing up in Fairbanks, Alaska?
It was great. I'm not gonna lie. I really now when I go back, especially when it gets colder and darker, it seems difficult, but I don't remember it. And I just remember, when I was a kid playing all the sports, and I played soccer and basketball and all those things and hockey, that we had such great parent support. My parents never missed anything. The parents that coached the teams were all great. Um, and so it's a very active town, very big running town, big Nordic skiing. And I was there skiing when we transitioned from classical skiing to skating. We had a great American skier out doing Endestad that was kind of revolutionary in that. So it was fun, and it was the 80s, so you can imagine your 80s in Alaska. It was pretty much you know,
The Wild
buckle
West.
up, hold on. Yeah. So I always very thankful for my opportunities to grow up and around such great people. And, I think the one thing that's great about Alaska, it's very diverse, and people really value hard work and being honest and they don't judge you, for anything other than your merit. And so it's a great place to grow up. And, it's, I think it's difficult now as I get older. But it was awesome back then. So.
Right on. Thank you.
Coach, you mentioned starting coaching when you were a head coach when you were 24. Now, as a seasoned professional vet, what would you tell that 24-year-old?
You were only there because of about 100 great people picked you up and put you on their shoulders, man. It's like I think when you're young like that, you don't realize that you're just a product of the people you're around. And I didn't know at that time that, I'd watch my dad coach, I don't know, thousands of people and gives, pep talks and when he used to bring Lanny Davidson from Oklahoma, who was head coach, up to do wrestling camps, and they'd live with us for 6 weeks. And so he'd bring like the Big Ten heavyweight champ, and they'd stay in our house, and and just to be around as many amazing people as I was able to be around was the only reason I had those opportunities. And I think you conflate sometimes maybe you're talented or you have the skill that people don't have, but the reality of it is it's just the people around you. So I was glad I was responsible to that. I don't know if I tell my younger self a whole lot of stuff. Um, I was surprisingly patient, which I think is difficult nowadays. Things don't seem to move the same speed. So I didn't get into college coaching until I was 35, you know? So um, yeah, I would just tell myself to be thankful for my opportunities and make sure to keep working your tail off.
So you said you got to where you got because there was 100 people that helped you get there along the way. And in that epic promotional video that you sent me, you said kids will quit on themselves, but they won't quit on the team and they'll run for the team. Is that something you instill, or is that something that just happens based on the culture that you build?
Honestly, I don't think I mean, I definitely preach that. I think the kids, that we work with understand that's our philosophical construct. But I never think of myself as instilling the culture. I really think the culture comes from the student athletes. I think that we're working together, right? But at the end of the day, I tell them all the time, I've never put a uniform on at CSU Pueblo. I've never run a race. It's their team. It's not my team. uh, I'm just providing guidance and opportunities, but really they're driving it. And so, but we do value putting a name on the front of our jersey ahead of the name on the back of our jersey. And I think that's an important life skill to have. And I think that if you lose that, you kind of lose the value of why we have college athletics. The whole idea is to learn to work together with others and put the needs of yourself aside for the greater good and to set goals and fail and succeed and really put energy in the system. And I think that is inherently, comes with that, if that makes sense. So I don't think it's anything I'm doing specifically or anything I'm creating. It's really creating self. I'm just having fun being part of it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
But it does seem like y'all are having some fun because, I've been asked more than one occasion in coaching interviews, how are you going to make it fun for the athletes? And, maybe as a younger coach, I might have, been a little bit more brash and said, well, we're going to win and winning's fun.
winning is
Um,
fun.
and for me, and again, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, we have this because there's so many great schools and programs that are doing so many things that CSU Pueblo is one of those schools that I had never heard of until I went to do my first Leadville 100. And then one of the high school kids that was involved with the race was a cross country kid. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to CSU Pueblo." So that kind of put it on my radar back in 2014. So I'm curious, when you took over, what was the state of the program and how have you been able to elevate it to where it's at now, where again, knowing what we know about the RMAC conference, there's no pushovers in the conference. It's if you're in cross country and track, if you're at the top of the conference, you're probably at the top of the heap, or pretty close to the podium at nationals too.
Yeah. Well, I do think, reverse engineering that is that being part of the RMAC is a huge advantage. I
Yeah.
think a lot of coaches ask me, like, isn't it tough being in such a competitive conference? And it is, but it really, the tide rises all ships, and it forces you to be more competitive and figure out ways to utilize your resources to be as successful as you possibly can. And I've loved being around such great coaches and great programs. I mean, don't get me wrong, it gets frustrating sometimes too, but it's a net positive for sure. So I think that actually helps us achieve some of the things we're trying to do. Um, the my career path has been, and I don't think it was on purpose, but I've been historically kind of bar rescue person, where, I've had opportunities to go into programs that maybe weren't as competitive as they wanted them to be. And I was able to make them more competitive. And I hate to say it that way. It's a we thing. I don't like the I voice, but, as part of that. And so I think, my philosophy is it's kind of stone soup, you're trying to get everybody to contribute. Um, to the greater good, and really, it's never a lack of talent or whatever. It's just direction and opportunities. And so, I think at CSU Pueblo they had just a women's program, and it hadn't been very successful. And um, so they were looking to add a men's program as well for kind of enrollment based, and then try to get the women more competitive. And I remember when I got a couple phone calls from some people that were like, knew the job was going to potentially open up, and they said it was a great opportunity. And so I looked into it. I didn't know anything about CSU Pueblo either, honestly. What I remember Pueblo from as a kid was there was that commercial. It was the 81001 zip code. I think it was like a CD company or something like that. And so when I looked at the roster and what they were doing, from a competitive standpoint, in my mind, my first thought was, there's something keeping the program from being successful. I don't know if it's something in the area or whatever. And I applied, and I got the interview. When I came in, I realized pretty quickly that there wasn't anything in our way. They had everything they needed to be successful. We just needed to work harder and do a better job, And so I think that we were, initially we were, recruiting everybody. And anytime you go to a new program, some of the things from the old program will work, but a lot of them won't, and especially recruiting, because it's just different, right? You got to figure out the recipe or the formula for that particular place. And so it took us a couple of years. And I think one thing that really jump started it for us was, 6 athletes came with me from the program I was in before, another program that I knew, and they were very competitive. And so it gave us kids right away going to nationals. I mean, the very first year we had men's indoor track, we got second in the DMR by 3/100ths of a second to Adams, and we both broke the meet record by 3 seconds. So we were able to kind of jumpstart it right from the get go, and then add some other things. I think we just kind of figured out who we are and where we're going, and slowly gotten better and better, and the kids are working really hard. So, I don't think it was anything particular I did. I think it was a lot of things that were happening, around us organically. And I'm excited to be part of it and excited for it to keep moving.
Are there friendly rivalries within the RMAC with the coaches? Because I think from an outsider's perspective, back in the day it was, Coach Vigil and Coach Van de Bosch, and you always think that, maybe they're at each other's throats, but then you read Coach Vigil's book and you're like, oh, they're kind of friendly and they bounce ideas off of one another. And, some of the coach at Mines is a Western guy, and, Coach Michael is a Western grad. Coach Martin is still there. Is it a friendly thing? Are you shaking hands and chatting it up at the conference meet, or is it you got your game face on?
Good question. Me personally, I do. I know that some of those, and I've only been in the conference for 12 years, so I'm relatively new to compared to some of the people, but maybe around long enough to watch it evolve even since I've been here. It is very competitive. Let's put it that way. And I do think that everybody respects each other and they get along well. But it's competitive for sure. And I'm very close with the Mines coaches. They're some of my best coaching friends. I like everybody, and yeah, I don't want to give you a non-answer. But
No, no, you're good.
don't think that people aren't trying to cut each other's heads off. They are,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like it's kind of that Ollie Frazier thing, right? Where you realize without those people, you're not who you are. And so they're an important part of your fabric of your success. And even though sometimes it seems like a negative, at the end of the day, when we all retire, we'll go have a beer and hang out together for sure. So
Right on. But
yeah.
I'm curious too, you talk about that recipe for success with recruiting, and I'm curious what that is. And I would imagine within the conference, there's probably a lot of recruiting battles that are being won and lost based on locations and resources and different things. I would imagine, you get some people from outside of the region, but I would imagine from within the region, you're all got your eyes on some of the same student athletes.
Yeah, and I think, that's part of it is that you have to realize kind of where can you have success, and I mean, a good example would be, we have a very good engineering program at CSU Pueblo, right? But we're also in the same region as Colorado School of Mines,
Mm.
right? And so when we start recruiting a student athlete and they're a 4.0 30 ACT engineering student, and Mines looks into them, we probably know we're not going to win that one, right? And so I think people try to find their strengths and their niches. And so I think when I first came in, we probably crossed over people more and maybe stepped on each other's toes more than we do now. But it seems like it kind of settles down and you find homeostasis and you figure out, who fits you well. And we still compete against each other with recruits, but I think it's more amicable and we don't get each other's way as much. We kind of have our own kind of angle at it, is what I found. So, um, and I do think that's the thing is like you got to figure out. And what I typically did is, without really having much of a background in Division II, the formula for Division II is not the same as mid-major Division I or Power Five Division I or whatever. And so, we struggled early to get domestic in-state kids to come to Pueblo for a number of reasons. And we ended up, so we do much better now. We have a lot of Colorado kids that have had a lot of success, but I looked at other programs and they were going international, which has definitely happened a lot more at the NCAA level. And you got to find, I always think recruiting's like going to prom, right?
Mhm.
It's like if you're going to go over and ask the cute girl to go to prom, you want to go with someone that wants to go with you. If you ask that cute girl to go and she's like, yeah, sure, I'll go. If that guy doesn't ask me and that guy doesn't ask me and that guy doesn't ask me, so you tend to, put your time into the people that value you for who you are. And I think that's what everybody's trying to do is find out who can fit their system and who's going to meet their needs, and so I think after, 12 years in that we're getting a better idea of how that's going for sure.
And in that recruiting process, I know you recruit personalities, not talent. How do you
Absolutely.
sniff out those personalities and know that there's someone that you want to work with?
That's a great question. I've never really thought of it that way. The first thing I always think about is, and I don't know if I was very good at this when I was younger, and I don't know, maybe I'm not as good at it as I think I am now, but I always feel like everybody has some version of what I call it, right? Do they have it, right? And I think as I've gotten older, I've been able to recognize that in people a little bit more. And you kind of, so when I go to meets, I'll watch, how does that student athlete obviously run the race, but how do they interact with their teammates? How do they interact with their coaches? When they're done with their event, are they, just sitting in the stands with their parents on their phone? Or are they down cheering their teammates on, And you kind of see how they move through space and realize, I think the big thing I always preach is you're not recruiting someone for what they've done. You're recruiting for what they can do once you get there. Because if we get a 410 mile guy, for instance, right? And that person's going to typically get recruited by a lot of people. Okay. And they come in and they run, say, 410 for 1,600 meters. So they're 412 miler, right? Last year at our indoor conference meet, the last time they got in was 408.
Hmm.
If they take the top 18 in every event, if you run 410, you don't really even exist. So if you recruit a 410 guy, you got to have a 410 guy that can run 4 flat in the first couple of years, right? And not everybody can do that. And usually people aren't, inhibited by their ability level. It's the other things that keep them from being successful, right? And and so I found that if you recruit someone that looks on paper not as talented, but they have a amazing personality, they'll figure out a way to be successful, you know. And if you find someone who's really talented, but they're just not that into it or whatever, both parties end up being frustrated. So we definitely spend a lot of time making sure that it's a good fit for both the student athlete and for us, knowing that that'll help us moving forward in the next couple 2 or 3 years. Um, and I had someone, we had this conversation the other day. I think the other thing too is I've been able to, and I maybe some other coaches are a lot better at this, but you tend to start being able to see what that person's capable of before they can even see what they're capable of. And so you're looking at them and you're going, man, this kid's amazing. And they're thinking, I'm not even very good. And you're like, no, you're really good. Trust me. And so it's fun. It's almost the Michelangelo, like it's already in there. It's already in the granite. You're just trying to help them clear away the stuff that's in the way of them being who they are or they could be. Right. And that's really the fun part of our job. So that part I really like, honestly.
So clearing away that stuff that's in the way of getting that fast mile or whatever the event is, how much of that is the X's and O's of the programming and how much of that is lifestyle?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think, inherently we do some things that are maybe proprietary. I think that from a workout standpoint, there's not a lot of really proprietary workouts. I think coaches have known, ever since David Martin and Peter Coe back in the 70s, we have a pretty good idea what's happening, from an exercise physiology standpoint. Um, there's some new things with biomechanics and applying force to the ground properly, and some of those other things that are a little bit different. They're kind of new cutting edge things. But I do think as a lot of it is just helping those student athletes move through space in a productive way. Sometimes they're just in their own way. They don't sleep enough. They don't feel themselves correctly. They're not concentrating when they need to concentrate. They just need to learn some skills. But that's what the programs are designed for. And I was exactly the same way. I mean, I was bumping in the walls when I first went in there, and I just had really good people around me. And so I do think that's probably the vast majority of it. And then it comes down to race strategies and some of those other things that are a little bit more X's and O's. Definitely it's a balance, but I would say it's more important to have the structure and having people move through space correctly. Then you're not going to write workouts that are going to save the planet.
Well, Coach, with that being said about there's no real secrets to the proprietary blend. I'm curious, do the Thunderwolves dabble in the world of double threshold at all?
You know, um, and I am going to be careful with my words here. I don't want any hate mail, but that's not a new concept. That's been around for a really long time. And that's what I think people don't understand. Like, I think anymore with the way the world moves is so fast paced, and there's social media, and there's so much access to information that everybody thinks everything's new. But they've been doing great things with those since the 70s and 80s. And, same with music. All these kids will listen to these new songs they love. I'm like, yeah, that was a hit in 1984. Right. And so I would say the same thing. My coach in college, Coach Leach, and he's just phenomenal coach. I mean, he's outstanding. One of the better coaches probably in the United States history. He's just fundamentally amazing. He used to go over and stay with Peter Coe and David Martin and train with Seb Coe. And so all of our programming at Montana was straight from the UK system, you know, and those guys, and he works really closely with Joe Vigil. They're very good friends and they're on some summits together and things like that. Um, so we were doing double thresholds, and I guess I'll tell the story. And I remember talking to Coach Leach one time, and he made the joke of like, every couple of weeks we were trying to kill you. And I laughed and he didn't laugh. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You were. And he goes, remember when we did this, when did this? I'm like, yeah, we did. When I was a freshman in college, I went to college when I was 17. Yes, I just turned 18. We ran a 10-mile threshold run in the morning on what we called the BFI run. And it was out to the landfill and back. And then that afternoon, we did 5 by K with 3 minutes rest. right? I mean, those weren't uncommon things. So I do think they're effective, and we do some things like that as well. But I don't see it as a new thing. I think I'm glad everybody else is kind of figuring it out, and it makes sense. But um, I don't think we're doing anything from that standpoint that hasn't been done, for quite a long time.
Right, right. But and I would say too, like talking about the X's and O's of training, I have as I've gotten older, I've dove in more into the biomechanics of things, and I also have some strength and conditioning certifications, and I feel like you're saying, applying for ground force and getting kids stronger um, has such a huge impact, and I think those things have become a little bit more mainstream in terms of what everyone is doing now, and it's like if you're not doing those things, you're leaving money on the table where back in the 90s, it wasn't common that you were having your coach talk to you about your biomechanics unless you were getting injured. And then maybe if you're around the right person, they were doing it. But it was like, yeah, you can be fast and be very inefficient. But if we can,
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great thing about running now is that not only do people understand more about what proper running positions to be in? How do you apply force to the ground? How you decrease ground contact times, vertical oscillations. The cool thing now, too, is that you have Garmin watch information. I mean, the amount of technology that's available to the average person to be able to chart that data is unbelievable, right? And that was something, when I was running, we had a Casio watch that, yeah, exactly. Exactly, and it's like we didn't know how far any of the runs were or anything. We were just guessing, and so I mean, you can track all those things and put them in spreadsheets, and then on top of that, the footwear is more individualized, and you can find footwear that fits everybody's needs, and so I do think the sport has moved forward in that regard tremendously. And I do think that as you look at the times dropping, that the shoes have gotten. I never envisioned a day where the technology of the shoes would actually make a difference. When I was running, spikes were spikes and flats were
mm,
flats and running shoes were running shoes, and it didn't really matter. Um, but now the shoes do matter, and the surfaces we're running on are much faster, and there are a lot of advances, and you can see it. The times are dropping quick, So you're right. If you're not keeping up on some of those things, you're gonna get left in the dust.
talk about the technology component. I know from me personally speaking, sometimes being a slave to the data can take away from the fun of it, or can just change your outlook on things. Do you have to, are kids still, obsessed with things like the Strava data and the different things, or is that
A
something you
hundred
have to
percent,
address? Yeah.
100%. We call it being slaves to their watches,
Yeah.
and you're right. The fun part of training sometimes is just leaving your watch at home
Yep.
and just you got a 10-mile loop, you're gonna go do it, you're just gonna run and talk to your buddies and enjoy the day and just what we call put the quarter in the jar, right? And if you're looking like I have to run at this velocity, or you're tracking you know your cadence on your watch and things like that, I think you can like lose the fun part of it. And if
Yeah.
it's not fun, you're not going to want to do it anymore. So we do encourage um kids to have some days where they run without their watches and things like that. Honestly, it happens more when they just forget to charge them and things like that. I don't know if it's on purpose, but it is a balance because you do have access to those things and they are important and you want to use them, but you also have to understand their tool and they're not, they shouldn't be the most important part of it. It should be
Yeah.
as a tool to help you out, not the middle of the circle.
Coach, you said your job is to help kids get out of their own way, and there was a lot of things you kind of listed as far as sleep, recovery, going to class, things like that. And one thing we like to know when we talk to college coaches is being a head coach of a NCAA Division two team, you're running a business and you have other coaches you have to delegate through. So what are you delegating with your coaches? What are you taking control of? Obviously, you can't ask every kid on the team how they're sleeping. So how's that work?
Yeah. What we try to do is make it, the athlete driven. You know, I mean, we want, and I think that's a great question, and we want them to have ownership of it. Does that make sense? So we kind of have those conversations, and we we'll sit down and have chalk room talks about this is tapering, and this is how you fuel your body correctly, and here's how your body uses fuel, and kind of what's the philosophical construct of what you're trying to do. Like, what are we trying to do? Like, honestly, we'll start as easy as like, why do we train? I mean, think about it. Like, why don't you just sit on your couch and watch TV? Right? You train for a reason. What does a training do? So we talk about structure of a muscle and function of a muscle and like what actually happens at the cellular level. We're very lucky in that we're able to test kids, VO2 max test them, lactate threshold test them, and things like that occasionally, and so they can understand, what's actually happening, and from there, you know, challenge them to make decisions that are part of the solution and not part of the problem. So it's like if you think going out until 3 a.m. and putting a lampshade on your head is going to help our team get better, well, okay, right? I don't think anybody else is going to think that. So we don't try to be top down with it, We try to empower them to understand what they're trying to do, so we can all work together, and then trust them that they're going to make good decisions and put the best interest of the group ahead of their own interests sometimes. And so far it's been working pretty well. But I don't think it's like a calculated, I'm this person and someone else is this person, you know. And I think the other thing we try to do is have and this is can be a challenge in track and field and cross country. Cross country is easy because everybody's like one race. You're all on the same team. You're all working towards the same goal. You go to track, and now you have throwers and jumpers and sprinters and distance kids. And sometimes they don't see it as we're one team working towards one goal, right? And each event group can have its own personality, its own philosophy, and we try to have a homogenous philosophy, right? So they all understand like what's it mean to be CSU Pueblo Thunderwolf, whether you're throwing a shot put or you're running the 10K or you're long jumping. And we try to really, I really think coaches, the entire job of a coach is just to build relationships between the coaching staff, between the coaches and the athletes and the athletes, the program itself and the community, your boosters, your alumni. And if you do a good job of that, the rest of it kind of falls into place.
Coach, I like to hear you talk about your athletes as humans and not robots. It's very refreshing.
Well, they really are. And I tell them all the time, I mean, and I'm so lucky that I get to work with these guys. I mean, I remember being them, and I tell them all the time, and sometimes it almost makes me cry, but like the things we ask them to do are difficult. I mean, they are grinding, they're working their tail off, and they're sacrificing a lot to put that jersey on and represent us. And I want them to know it's not lost on me. I remember those days, and it's awesome, but we understand how hard they're working. When we had to go ahead.
No, you can finish that thought.
I think this encapsulates it probably as much as anything. A couple years ago, we had a young lady named Yasmin Hernandez, who was a phenomenal runner for us, and she was national champion in 1,500 meters. She actually won the Colorado College Female Athlete of the Year. Any school, any sport. I mean, she was phenomenal. She graduated with a nursing degree, which is very difficult. We have the number one nursing program in the state of Colorado. It's very rigorous. There's a lot of clinicals. Then she got an MBA and a nurse. She was the very first nurse management master's degree to finish at CSU Pueblo. Her final semester, she decided cross country. She was an All-American. I think she finished, 25th or something at nationals across. And she was taking 21 credits of grad school at the same time she was doing that. And she got like a 3.9. I think sometimes people don't understand how hard that is. And so sometimes I'm just in awe and amazed at like the people I'm around and how amazing they are. And again, I'm just excited to be part of it. So,
well, as someone who took 12 years to graduate college and I had separate lives as far as athletic life in college and then actually being a student, I applaud that student because I know how tough that is. That is amazing. You also said that with recruiting as far as in the conference, it's location and majors. And when you sent me that video and I saw the drone shot of Pueblo, I was like, that is not how I pictured Pueblo from how everyone talked about it on campus at CU Denver. So get into what the town's like, what the campus is like, and you mentioned some of those majors as well. What majors are kids going to CSU Pueblo for?
Yeah, so I think our top major, obviously, we're number one in the state in nursing. We're number two in sociology criminology in the state. Our master's program, especially for grad transfers, is phenomenal. We have a top 100 business school in the world. Um, and so actually science is very strong. Mass comm is very strong. We have a very broad bandwidth of majors. And our school is a Princeton Review Tier 2 school. So we're highly rated, mostly because our student teacher ratio is 14-1. So academically, we're able to meet a lot of needs. And we're not super narrow in that, like, our admittance rate's fairly high. So we can get kids in that maybe weren't great students in high school and then teach them to be great students in college. Our fall GPA, our team GPA was 3.85 on the women's side and 3.71 on the men's side. So we really push academics heavily. And that's, but you don't have to be that great to begin with. You just got to buy in and do the work, right? So I do think we have a lot of things to offer from that standpoint. I love Pueblo, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't know anything about Pueblo, and if you're not from Colorado, you're like, I don't get it. But when you get here, Pueblo definitely has some negatives, and a lot of places do. I've never seen that. We have the number 2 safest campus in the state, next to Colorado School of Mines. And the area to train is phenomenal. I mean, we have 320 days of sun. As you saw, we have 30 miles of soft trails to run on. We have the fastest track in the state. It's not even close. We have a 10,000 square foot weight room right onto it. So we have a lot of really nice resources. And if you like running, this is about as good as it gets. So I'm super excited for opportunities. I love the community of Pueblo. They supported us a bunch. And I think you can, if you're willing to work hard and buy in, you can do anything you want here.
Rich, I know you have a question, but Coach, you had me at 320 days of sun.
Coach, I'm curious, a couple off of that. First, what's the student body population there?
Yeah, it's about 4,000 students on campus, give or take.
Okay.
And I think we have maybe 5,000 with extended studies and non-traditional students and things like that. So it's not, we're definitely trying to grow it. And I think, every, you know, university is kind of seeing there's less students coming out of high school. There's just less kids than there used to be. And with the economy the way it is, some people are going right into working. So, but we're very lucky to be partnered with the Colorado State University system, and they're very supportive. And so it's fairly stable, but definitely looking to grow. So I definitely think enrollment's a key part of schools our size.
Okay. And I guess going off of enrollment, what are the roster sizes you got?
So we're about 70 between the men and the women,
Okay.
which is sustainable. We're not really asked to do a ton of enrollment based recruiting. It's more, fit and then trying to be competitive. But we have a very broad range of abilities on our team. We have some people like, Reese, who you mentioned, ran the first sub 4 mile on Colorado soil in an official race. And then, Helen's leading Division II in the 600, the 800, and the mile as of last weekend. And then we have kids that are just starting track, that are working their way through. And so, but we also, I think, kind of some of the questions asked earlier, really our philosophy is everyone's an experiment of one. We're not trying to cookie cutter like everybody else fits in the system. We try to find what fits best for that particular student athlete. And so that takes a lot of time and energy from our coaching staff. And so you want to make sure you have people in your program that are, trying to get better and want to work hard and are excited about those opportunities. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself. So I think that there is a little bit of a sweet spot for how big the roster can be, where you can still give everybody those opportunities.
Right, definitely. And then curious, being in southern part of Colorado, the state, what's the climate like? Are you guys dealing with snow in the wintertime? And
Oh my
what
goodness.
elevation are you dealing with?
So our elevation of our track is about 4,850 feet.
Okay.
Our campus is a little bit up on the hill, about 5,000. So we're in that again from actually as physiology standpoint, we're in a really green zone. We're in a good like blue zone.
Yeah.
We're good. Um, uh, the weather has been atrocious this winter, and I always tell the recruits our average high this time of year is about 50 degrees, 51 degrees. It was 11 degrees or something today. So but it's been like that all over the nation. So I think
Yeah.
the weather pattern, but typically we're very, very mild. We hardly get any snow. Like I said, we're outside all the time. We don't have an indoor track. We don't really need it. This year's been a little bit more of a challenge, but in general, that's not really a problem for us. So
So,
So we know the ladies got third in cross country. You mentioned some of those athletes that are killing it right now in indoor track. Going into indoor track nationals, who do we need to keep an eye out for? Who do we need to be rooting for? And same for outdoor track.
yeah, starting the women's side, obviously Helen Braybrook is the engine of our team. She's just phenomenal. I could spend the entire podcast just talking about her and wouldn't get very far. She's our captain, and she really, drives the narrative. Um, and we have some good young kids. I'm thinking like Leah just came in. She's Scottish, and she's one of the top 800 runners and milers. She was our number 2 girl at cross nationals. Helen was our number 1 girl. Margot Thomas is our 3rd girl, and she's qualified so far for the 3K indoors. Uh, Jaden Heron is having a phenomenal year as a junior. She's qualified both the 8 and the mile, and she's the first part of our DMR, about 1200 leg. We had some great throwers. Phoebe Wessels, shot put, is qualified, and she's been All American a number of times. Catherine Higgins is finished as high as 2nd in the shot put. They're both seniors. Who am I missing? Camille Renault is doing really well. Gabby's our 400 leg. So we have some younger kids that are moving in that direction. So I think we'll be able to take, 7, 8 girls to nationals potentially. On the guys' side, Reese is our version of Helen, which he's gonna cringe at me saying it that way. They're very good friends, but you've never seen people make more fun of each other than those two. So, and they always have a hard time saying nice things about each other. So, but Reese is obviously having a phenomenal year. I mean, 353 adjusted for a mile is just, unbelievable and he's only 22 years old. We have John Sweep as a sophomore for us. He's run 401 so far this year, and he's our leadoff leg for the DMR. Our men's DMR is ranked, I think, 2nd or 3rd. Our women are 2nd, I believe. Things moved around a little bit last weekend. Emil Megel has run 140 for the 800, and so he's one of the top guys there. Caleb Tipton's been All-American a number of times in the 800. We have a new kid, Tim Anstedt, who's run 150, and he should hopefully get in. Ty Smith will be our 400 leg. He's been All-American a number of times. So we're really trying to, make a big push of that middle distance. And this year's a festival year, which will be a little bit of an advantage for us because it spreads out over 3 days. So the kids get a little more rest. So those are kind of the big names. But we got some young kids that are on their way up. So I think outdoors, we'll add a bunch more throw guys in there, and they're a little bit younger. But we have some couple guys who could probably make nationals. And we'll add Caleb Bloy in the steeplechase. He was our number 3 guy at nationals in cross. He broke our school record last year at 851. So we're just slowly kind of adding pieces, and we're trying to just squeeze it like an anaconda, breathe in and, breathe out, no breathe in kind of thing, and keep working our way towards the top. So
As far as indoor and outdoor, what's the mindset? Are you building towards outdoor through indoor, or do you see them as we're going all out in both seasons and we're getting as much hardware as we can?
yeah, that's a good question. And it kind of varies every year because doing all 3, when you have cross country, indoor, and outdoor, that's a lot. Historically, when I was running, everyone would kind of just run through indoor, and indoor was just kind of a means to outdoor. But now indoor, you've seen all the world records and everything's going down. So it's kind of changed a little bit. For us, indoor becomes important because there's a distance medley relay, and that's usually we've won both sides. We've won on the women's side, we won on the men's side. We're usually in top, couple 2 or 3 teams, and that's a lot of points. So, and that's not outdoors. And so I think that specifically for us this year, we are shooting for outdoor because we're hosting outdoor nationals. And so you get an opportunity to compete on your own venue, sleep in your own bed, and so we've kind of lined everything up for us to be as competitive as we can be outdoors this year. and then kind of go from there. But we're having a lot of success indoors too. But I think the big picture is definitely outdoors.
When is that? When is that date, Coach?
That would be, I believe, May 24th to the 26th that weekend.
Put
It's on
that on
my
the
calendar
calendar,
for me.
Jim.
I already
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I'm calendar challenged as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's really cool with the distance medley and that sort of stuff with the relays, is taking over programs, trying to figure out how to elevate the program and get kids on board with things. And we've always, with the coaches I've worked with, we've always kind of honed in on the relays where we can get, four guys or four gals that can, maybe not be at the top of the podium individually, but you put the four of them together and, we're bringing home some hardware, and that increases the buy-in and get kids to believe pretty quickly. So I do appreciate the work with the DMR and those individuals, maybe sacrificing some individual glory for the greater good, and maybe the top of the podium in the DMR.
yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun for everybody. So
Yeah. Coach, I'm curious, talking recruiting, uh, based on your background, with your time Nordic skiing, are you are you are you are you covering the results in the Nordic skiing and all, and seeing if there's any kids in Minnesota that cross over and do like a Courtney Dauwalter that are doing some cross country as well too? Are you finding any athletes like that?
honestly, I don't, and
Yeah.
it's not that I'm not trying to do that, but what I found, and kind of as a former predictably mediocre Nordic skier, um, they don't really cross over as well as you think.
Yeah.
I think for the longer distances, but the NCAA distances not as much. I think if you're looking at half marathons and stuff like that, it would definitely, that aerobic capacity would really come into play. Um, and you can see it. My brother-in-law, don't know exactly. My youngest brother's wife, her brother is David Norris,
Okay.
Nordic skier. So he's top, and he's won Mount Marathon a number of times. He broke Kilian Jornet's record, and you can see, man, big engine from training, but it probably wouldn't translate itself to a 5K on the track as much, right? Um, so, but the concept's there, absolutely. And I want to make a pitch really quick. Is that I tell people my two favorite people to coach are wrestlers and hockey players, right? Because those kids are tough, they're socialized to work hard. If you say you're doing 10 that day, they want to do 12, and so I do think that you do look at different sports as like what are those kids, how are those kids socialized, and how will that bring value to your program. So I do think Nordic skiing has value. I think a lot of the sports have value in track that aren't necessarily track.
Well, while we're on this topic, I figure get you to do another plug. As a track coach and as a wrestling coach, oftentimes struggle with the football coaches to get them to buy into what you're doing and how you can make their athletes better football players. And I'm sure you've experienced this as a track coach. So if you could maybe put it out there for the high school football coaches that are maybe a little reluctant to put their athletes in other people's hands and feel confident that they're going to make those athletes better athletes on the football fields.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say, quick pitch for the CSU Pueblo football coaches: both Coach Riston and Coach Vigil, Coach Vigil, have done a great job working with us. In fact, we were able to sign a young man. He was a top 10 discus thrower in the United States as a high school kid, as a junior, to do both, coming in next year. One of the first things I did when I became a high school head coach to get the football coaches, because I coached cross country and then boys basketball and the track, to get the football guys to come out, is I showed them, and I was in Montana, so I coached like what would be a 1A or 2A school in Colorado, about 200 kids in the school. Um, for 4 consecutive years in Montana at the Class B level, the team that won the track state championship in the spring won the football state championship the next fall. So I went in and said, "Hey," and he's like, "Really?" And then he's like, "Yep, let's do it." And so, we went from 12 kids in our team combined, men and women. After a while, we won, my last year of coaching high school, we won both state cross country championships and both state track championships in the same year. And our football team was the top three. Our women won the state basketball championship. So it's really all the same kids. And you're right. It helps to, and there's nothing better for football than track and field. 100%. And honestly, wrestling. If you want to be a good lineman, you should be able to either defense or offense. You should have great footwork. You should wrestle. You should throw, shot put. You should do everything you can to make yourself better. And I think a lot of the narrative recently has been kind of specialization, but all the research shows it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
The old way worked way better, where the kid just, if it's a football kid, he'd play football, he'd wrestle, and then he'd do track, right, or vice versa. And so we definitely are advocates for that. We're looking for those kind of student athletes. And that's the cool thing about Division II is we get a chance to do maybe more of that than they would at some of those other levels. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, it's man, I feel like sometimes adults are doing a disservice to athletes who might increase their marketability and increase their chances of getting, more of their academics and their future taken care of because they're more diverse. And it pains me when I have coaches that are like that all they're wanting to do is get kids. You need to be bigger. You need to put on more weight. I'm like, no, they need to be more athletic.
Yeah,
They
agreed.
need to be stronger, but they don't need to be heavier. Like I've seen too many, kids and friends and different people that have eaten their way out of scholarships and different things because someone was telling them they needed to be bigger on the football field.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can see it a lot, and I haven't seen it. We're pretty lucky in that our coaches work well with this, but you bring in a kid who runs 10, 6, and 100, right? And he's, great high school track kid, and he's one of the best football players in the state. And let's say he's, 6 foot and 170 pounds, right? And the highlight reel is him just blowing by everybody and no one can tackle him. And then, they'll bring him in and try to get him to 190 or 200. And now he's an 11-1 kid that looks like everybody else on tape. You're right. I think there's a balance there. You got to be big and strong enough to play your position, but you also have to be athletic and fast. And I think that's really the challenge for coaches. I think some programs do a better job of that than other ones do for sure.
Yeah, I think the quote from Brooks Johnson was "Speed kills. It kills everyone that doesn't have it."
Yeah, exactly. So
Final four, Rich.
Uh, yeah, I mean, coaches, if there's anything that we haven't covered or anything you wanted to touch on before we get into the Final Four, we want to be respectful of your time and get you out of here. But if there's anything that we haven't covered or you want to mention about the school or the team, the floor is yours.
yeah, I guess if I had a minute or so, I would just say again, our we are player driven for sure. I just feel like I'm one piece in the puzzle, and we're really lucky to have great individuals, great coaching staff, kids on the team that are working hard, and we're very thankful for the opportunities that our administrators provide, and or the school provides for us as far as funding things. We have great facilities, so we're just really trying to do the best we can to make everybody proud. You know what I mean? And again, appreciate you guys having us on here to be able to talk about it, because I think we are a good place, and I think we give great opportunities academically, athletically, and not just track and field, but a lot of different programs. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about us as a program, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And Jimmy and I say every week that we do this, it gives us another team and another coach and more athletes to root for. And I think we've got banners and like a NASCAR shirt with all our different teams that we're rooting for and pulling for and supporting. And we're very proud of being from New Jersey too. And so if we can ever get people, to spread their wings and get out of the state. New Jersey is a very good cross country and track and field state. So we want to spread the message to the kids back home and let them know that there's a lot of awesome schools out there where they can do great things and be in beautiful areas and have lots of soft trails underfoot and beautiful facilities.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add to what Rich said, Coach, the conversation we had on the phone a couple of weeks ago prior to this and this, you fire me up. I'm super stoked that we had the opportunity to talk to you. And like Rich said, just to add on that, we will be rooting for you. Before we get into the Final Four, please forgive me because I have blue blockers on. But if you need to turn a light on over there, feel free. I
Oh,
see it's
gotcha.
getting a little bit darker.
Yeah, that's a good point. I apologize. I can
No, you're good.
yeah, I was in my wife's office and it got dark outside. So There we go. How's
Yeah,
that?
no,
Yeah.
yeah, no. Usually, sometimes that we don't know how to address that, and then the person's just sitting in the dark, and I'm like, well, that's on me. I need to
I
say
will say
something.
you guys are brave because I've heard my whole life, even from my family, that I have a face for radio. And so I feel like I've always been better in lower lighting situations, you know. So I
Sorry,
appreciate you asking me to turn a light on. That's a first. So
sorry to blow your spot up, Coach. Coach, first Final Four I have for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
I am, but only decaf.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Do you have a special way to brew that? Just drip coffee? How do you brew your decaf? How
Yeah,
do you
I
take it?
typically do the drip coffee thing. We have a one that does kind of the Keurig thing, and also you can drip coffee it. But I always tease the kids that they get their mocha frappuccino things or whatever. I'm kind of more of like a regular coffee guy, although I've gotten into chai latte lately. So
Those are good. Yeah.
So I will say we are a little bit of coffee snobs, but traveling over the summer with my job, we had like weird hours, and it was the first time I've ever started drinking decaf. So now you will catch me every once in a while when it's a little late, but I need a little kick me up because I believe it does have caffeine. It might just be me, but it definitely can wire me a little bit. But it's
okay.
definitely a little bit less than coffee. Do you feel that too? Do you feel you get a little bit of a jolt from
Yeah,
it?
and my heart doesn't do great with the caffeine anymore, honestly. It kind of flips around a little bit. So I just get more, kind of edgy. So I don't drink caffeine. And every once in a while I'll make a mistake and get it. And I know why people do, right? Because
Right
it's good stuff. But yeah, not really for me anymore. So
on. Are you taking that black?
I do a little cream and a little sugar. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of uh the Alaska in me wants to say I take it black, but it doesn't necessarily happen that way all the time. So
I hear you. We all have our little tricks with the coffee.
yeah,
Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Matt Morris?
good question, man. I try to do puzzles and lateral thinking things, and I mean, kind of sounds funny. I play like Risk and some things that make you kind of think outside the box. But I really do think that the more you use your brain, then it keeps sharp, just like the rest of it. And I like, I'm not able to train with the kids anymore, but I do want to cut it, set aside an hour or so a day to get some workout in and get things moving, to clear my brain a little bit, and then spend some time challenging myself mentally to do puzzles or whatever else I can. And then the rest of your day is filled with administrative things that kind of, you know, become white noise. So,
Hmm. What's your favorite mode of exercise or fitness?
running for me is tough anymore.
Yeah.
I'm in my middle 50s, and I was able to run for a long time and do fairly well, but now I'm gonna say this. I like walking, which I just can't even believe I would ever say that. I ride my Peloton a lot, and I have a row machine, and I try to lift, so I kind of mix it up so it's not boring, and just I just trying to get steps in, man. I just feel like moving's good, so
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite thing I do anymore, but I kind of stay off my bike on the roads because my balance isn't as good as it used to be, and so just trying to be safe and move. So
Right on. Well, we're a big fan of getting steps, so
yeah,
you're in a good place.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you, Coach. If I'm running on flat ground or on concrete, I will get hurt. So I walk a lot. I got a rucksack that I just got around Christmas that I've been doing too. That kind of makes me feel like I'm actually doing something, but also just moving. The older I get, I feel just moving and breathing and being outside helps a lot.
yeah. Do you guys ever do that? I got into this a couple years ago where you do that 30-minute walk. Like I have a treadmill as well, but you put it on 12% grade at 3 miles an hour.
Yep.
That is rough. I mean, that was a way harder than I thought it was going to be. I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk, and I got done, and I barely made it. So you can definitely challenge yourself if you move the grade around and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. The other one I've been doing lately is first 5 minutes I do at zero, and then every 5 minutes I increase by 3%, and I go all the
yeah,
way up. I go all the. I have a treadmill that goes all the way to 15%.
ooh, 15, man. Well, I've never got to 15 before. 12,
It,
12 is kind of my limit. I'll give that a shot.
yeah, it gets. I find as I get to that last 5 minutes at 15, I'm holding on a little bit.
I imagine your calves and your rear end must be pretty lit up, you know?
It's a good workout. It's a good
Yeah.
workout for sure.
Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I don't read as much as I used to. Audiobooks way more than I read. Um, Mostly because I feel like, I've known young kids, but I have 11-year-old, I have a 21-year-old. Um, so I'll do it when I'm mowing the lawn or doing things. I like the classics. Like I listened to The Art of War this summer again. I listened to Zen on Motorcycle Maintenance. I've read, just recently Once a Runner for maybe the
Yes.
127th time. Like I like that. I do. I love podcasts. And I've watched some of your guys's. And I again I get intrigued by the wrestling ones for sure. And I like some of the new music too. There's some new good. I'm kind of an old classic rock guy, but Volbeat is kind of a little newer, and they're pretty tight. And I try to stay somewhat relevant. Mostly so I can make fun of the kids and that kind of thing. But um, definitely not anything cutting edge for sure. I'm between the lines kind of guy. So
Well, you just gave us a new one. It gave me a new one at least. I
Yeah,
don't
me
want to speak for
too.
Jimmy, but I will be pulling up the Spotify when we get off of here and cooking my dinner some Volbeat.
I'm telling you, Volbeat. If you like the old, 80s rock with everything's tuned to E, Volbeat is some good stuff. So
All right, I'm excited.
yeah,
Coach, last one we have for you. It's a little lighthearted, but it could be food. Maybe it's a beverage. You're in a great state for that sort of thing. You mentioned you have young kid. Maybe you're a closet Swiftie. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
I do. I'm not a closet Swiftie. I do think that my wife is 100% not a closet Swiftie. She is like
She's a
full blown out in
Swiftie.
the open Swiftie. But I do think Taylor Swift does some great things. That's not necessarily my genre, but I think her song "Mean" is one of my favorite songs ever. It's kind of older one. Um, you know what? I do. I like to watch Viking shows. I don't know what it is. Something about when the Vikings were invading Europe is like my favorite history thing. And so I've watched every single Viking show you can get your hands on. I've watched it, and it's just really intriguing to me. And I've had a chance to go to England specifically, every year for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's really cool to go visit some of those castles and just the history of it. And so that's kind of my when I don't have anything to do, that's the stuff I'll binge. So
All right. Well, that is a first, Jim. We got our first
Yeah.
Viking guilty pleasure.
yeah,
That's
Do you
awesome.
have do you have any particular Viking show, literature of a particular Viking that you love their story, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm been watching actually Vikings, which is the last one I watched, but there's a bunch of great ones. If you go on A&E or Netflix has, and I'm watching this one on Netflix in particular I believe it was a History Channel show initially and got picked up by Netflix. Um, I think Ragnar Lothbrok is a very cool character and I don't think they even know if he's real, right? It's kind of the idea, but his sons are real. And I think one cool thing about Viking culture, and again, I'm not an expert by any means, it's just fascinating to me, is it was very progressive in the fact that, and pirates too. I don't know if you guys, pirate shows are great for me because it didn't matter if you were a guy or a girl, right? It was very like everybody had to do their job, and you could be a Viking queen or a king or a pirate queen, and so I think it was very it kind of it seemed progressive, and when it was 800 900 AD, so um, but yeah, not anybody super in particular. I think Blackbeard is pretty cool, even though he wasn't a Viking or sorry a pirate for very long, but very influential. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd that way. Not gonna lie. I'm sure that this will be the first time you heard that, but
That's awesome.
uh, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Now we got another thing to dive into too, Rich. We
Yeah.
like history a lot, so we will definitely dive into that. Coach, you said that you checked out some of the podcasts before you hopped on. We appreciate that. That means the world to us when our guests take time and they like what they see and they listen to some of the podcasts. That means a lot to us because sometimes we don't, is anyone listening? And to get feedback, that means everything to us.
Yeah, and you
Also,
guys are doing great work, man. I really
Thank you.
keep it up. The world needs more of this, and it's positive, and you're putting lights on. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of really good things right now, and I think we don't hear enough of that. We hear a lot of the negative, and so
Yeah.
this is really good work. So we appreciate you guys doing that,
Well, we
yeah,
appreciate your feedback.
and we're gonna get you some swag. So when we get off here, I'll send some stuff your way for
heck
sure.
yeah. We
Awesome.
appreciate that. We love Colorado and we love supporting teams in Colorado 100%. Coach, thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to watch the team at indoors and outdoors and see what they throw down. Super excited.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. I always appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. We do appreciate you, and we do look forward to indoor and outdoor nationals and what you got going in the fall and cross country. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us and share about CSU Pueblo and the program. Coach,
Awesome. Thank you.
folks, make sure you go check out the Thunderwolves. All right, give Coach Morrison and the program some love. Check out those links in the show notes. We will be back on the mat tomorrow night. We're going belly to belly with newly crowned New Jersey Group 4 state champions, North Hunterdon High School. Coach Dave Bell will be joining us, so he's going to fill us in on how that all went down and how the team is looking as they head into the districts and regions and the state tournament coming up. So we will be back for a third episode this week, so make sure you tune in tomorrow night, same time,